Welcome back. Now, more than 70% of teenagers in South Africa are exposed to online risk. This is according to a new report revealing that 77% of teens asked for support after experiencing online risk. To tell us more about this worrying study, I am now joined by Thomas Turvitt, who's a senior history teacher at the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls. Thomas, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this very important conversation with us. How long would you say, Thomas, this has been? For a very long time, we've known that these online risks are prevalent and quite there. If you could just talk to us a little bit more about this latest survey that has been conducted showing these startling numbers, up to 77%.
I think that part of the problem is that for a long time we tended to, or I think the public in general tended to think that the biggest problem is things like the dark web and pornographic sites and that, and I think we're finding now that it is the easy stuff that the kids have access to, like the Facebook and WhatsApp, and that is becoming more and more problematic, specifically because it is used for bullying, and whereas in the old days, once you were able to get away from school and you were on your own, it's almost like you could get away from that. But now, with it being online, our teenagers are constantly connected, and as a result, it's very difficult to get away from the bullying and everything that goes around that.
And Thomas, as you're speaking about, what our preconceived notions are of, the dark web and what dangers may be that you may actually have to go onto a certain website. And now you're saying, look, it's easy stuff now. It's on your phone. It's on the palm of your hand. You've got 24-hour access to it. It's social media as well. You mentioned bullying as well, online bullying. If you could just elaborate a little bit about some of these online risks that children are facing.
Look, these sites, and as you say, it's in their hand all the time. It's always available, and things are done where children are humiliated. They are targeted by very, very negative messaging, and it is almost as though this then follows them all the time. So, as a school, we are a trauma-informed institution where we specifically, in all that we do, we look at the impact of trauma and on our students. And so for us, this is a serious worry when we have to deal with it. And the challenges are that we're not always aware of how it's happening, or the girls are and teenagers are good at also hiding certain things. But it is a worrying trend that it is the easy accessibility of this, and that the fact that the kids are constantly bombarded by this message of that they are not good enough, or that they are not smart enough, or that they come from they don't have the same abilities, or they live on the wrong side of the track, if you want, and those are the things that keep on hurting. Not that I'm saying that the others aren't dangerous. Things like grooming and sexual trafficking, and that stays very dangerous and important, that we also deal with the kids with that. But the easy access to that is a very worrying phenomenon for us as educators and as an institution.
As you were talking about, the kinds of bullying from the olden days, comparing it to now in this technological era as well. You know, some of this bullying as well, if you could just explain it to us, and how subliminal it can also be as well, and not necessarily as covert as being called names on the playground. But for instance, you know, we've seen cases where there have been consequence management for WhatsApp groups that have been created in school scenarios as well. And that is also a form of exclusion of sort for some students, and some students don't take too kindly to that too. So this kind of subliminal bullying as well that the online world also introduces. If you could just break that down for us a little bit.
You know, a big part of that problem is the minute that we have, whether it's exclusion, and exclusion is a big part of that. If you, especially if you're in a community where that contact gives you part of what is happening, and now suddenly you are excluded, and you start finding out. But you know, people know things that I don't know. People are being informed about things that I don't know. The other thing is, you know, there's those subtle little jabs. It's not, you're not named. It's not, oh, it's Thomas. But there are those little subtle things, and very quickly you realize, but this is me. Or even if it just plants the little seed that it is me, it now becomes this thing that it eats at you. And you can imagine you have a student who is struggling with this at night. They are bombarded by this, and tomorrow she needs to be in class. She needs to write an exam, while this is constantly in the back of her mind, and it's always there. So it becomes really important for us as adults, and I'm not just talking as a teacher. I think, and all research shows that it can't be a school thing only. It has to be a partnership between parents, the society as a whole, and schools, and how we deal with this this phenomenon.
Yeah, and as you're saying, you know, it can't just be a school thing, because this is an ongoing issue as well that happens outside of the school too. But in terms of the school grounds, Thomas, is there a way that we can combat this problem? If one looks internationally at countries like France that have added a curb, an age limit to who can bring cell phones onto school property. If you're younger than the age, I think, of 15, then you can't. I know that the Netherlands, Italy, Greece are just some of the countries who've also implemented similar laws. Do you think that is what South Africa should be doing?
That's a very difficult question. Australia went that route, and within days, students, those kids who were suddenly excluded, found ways of being back on there. And I think that that's part of the problem, is that we're working with a generation of children that has grown up with technology. Technology isn't something that they fear. You know, we talk about the idea that some of us are literally migrants in this world. These kids have always had this. They've always been part of it. So I'm reluctant to say that the answer is banning it. I think the better approach is to find ways of educating, teaching, showing how to use this in a positive manner. Because just simply banning it, you know, I don't know, I think teenagers, and I know I was a teenager a very long time ago, but even then, the minute you were told don't do something, you were burning with a desire to find out, why am I not supposed to do this? So I think that education is a better route. that we need to have some restrictions is important. And if I take our school as an example, there are obviously certain there's access is limited onto specific sites that is seen as dangerous. Um, and that's different than things like WhatsApp or messaging app, especially when you also work with children who are away from home for long periods of time. It is also their connection to their parents and to to their community. So it's a difficult one. Um, I'm not convinced that simply banning it um, will change everything. It might be a combination of factors. Um, I think very young kids. Um, I'm not sure that it's in their best interest to be on this at that young an age, because I think the damage at that young age is even worse than. Not that I'm suggesting that a 17-year-old deals with this kind of bullying in any way better.
Yeah. Just to pick up before you leave, where you mentioned, for an example, for instance, at your school, at the Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy for Girls, that you try by then limiting access to some of these sites as well, but of course not one that will hinder communication between the learners and their families who are far away from their families. How has that worked? How has that been received by the learners there as well? The example you gave of Australia and them kind of circumventing the system in any way, this approach of limiting the access, has that worked out a little bit better in your case, in your school?
Look, when I talk about limiting access, I'm talking about inappropriate sites, for instance. So, and that doesn't really matter whether you're an adult or a student. There are certain, so the rules written into our procedures would, for instance, mean that if I type in into Google, as an example, I want a specific question that I'm looking for, and a website comes up, and I click on it, the system that we have might then say to me, well, there are certain, according to our school's security protocols, that site will not be allowed to be opened on on our system. And in that way, there are some checks and balances built into that. And I think that's also an important part, because very often students, you can end up on some really dangerous places quite innocently, because you're typing in something and it's, that you end up in something that is quite inappropriate. So in that sense, we have done that, and I'm not suggesting that there has been no breaches of that system at all, but it definitely is successful in shielding our girls more than having it widely open for them to just, just get onto it easily. Yeah.
Well, Thomas Servatt, unfortunately, that is all the time we have. But thank you so much for joining us this evening. Really appreciate it.